It is trade deadline day, or at least by the time this comes out, it'll be trade deadline eve, trade deadline day. The trade deadline is coming up. We're going to chat a little bit about it, all things Orlando Magic in a Twitter Spaces we recorded on Wednesday afternoon. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is February 9th, or it will be February 9th, 2023. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to hit a Twitter Spaces that I did on the Orlando Magic Daily Twitter page. While Twitter was down, still got people to talk, still got everyone in, don't worry. We will chat about the Orlando Magic's trade deadline strategy, what to expect from the Magic today, and plenty more about the Magic's future. We will get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's podcast is also brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. And now, without further ado, let's hit our Twitter Spaces conversation ahead of the NBA trade deadline. And we are live here on Twitter Spaces. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the site expert and editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Also the host of Locked On Magic. We're going to be here for the next 45 minutes to an hour talking a little bit about the Orlando Magic, of course, and what they're going to do ahead of the trade deadline. Should be a really interesting trade deadline. I think the Magic are in a really interesting spot. Obviously, 22 wins. We're super happy about that, which is odd because it'll probably be the last time we're ever super happy about having 22 wins for at least a little while longer. But the team's in a good spot, and I think we're all eager to see what comes next for this Orlando Magic team. If you're new to Twitter Spaces, all you have to, this show is supposed to be interactive. It's supposed to be for you to join. So if you have any questions or any thoughts about the Orlando Magic, about the season so far, about what the Magic should do at the trade deadline, go ahead and make a speaker request, raise your hand, whatever you have to do to join the show. I want your thoughts. I want to answer your questions. That is what I am here to do this trade deadline eve. To get us going, though, I do want to kind of pick up a thought that I had, that I've been having over the last few days, that I mentioned a little bit on Locked On Magic a little while ago, about where the Magic are positioned here at the trade deadline. It's been, obviously I think the big rumor that the Magic have had, or that has involved the Magic, has involved Fred VanVleet. Now, I am not someone who believes that Fred VanVleet is the answer for this team. I personally believe that the price tag is probably going to be a little too much, is going to handicap the Magic too much. And while I think Paolo and Franz need a third guy to kind of run with and need an extra player to run with, I personally am not convinced that VanVleet is that guy. Regardless of anything else, if the Magic are interested in Fred VanVleet, they can just sign him in the offseason. Why unload assets now, unless, again, it is to make the playoffs and make a serious postseason push? And if the Magic do trade Fred VanVleet, our tenor and what we talk about on this pod and in this space is going to change very dramatically. All of a sudden, it'd be nice to make the play-in to this team better make the play-in tournament because Fred VanVleet is that good of a player to elevate this team a little bit. But having said that, I don't quite get the interest. I think he's a good defender for his size. He's obviously a great three-point shooter, but he's coming up on the wrong side of 30 here. I think it's going to be real tough to kind of grow and raise the ceiling for this team. I think he's a floor raiser, not a ceiling raiser, if that makes sense. But obviously, there's several permutations and things that can happen after that. It's not a move I am wholly against. I don't think it's the right move at this juncture for this team, if that part makes sense. Having said that, it keeps coming up in rumors. We keep hearing all these rumors, all these things saying the Magic are going to chase after Fred VanVleet. The Magic are going to go after Fred VanVleet. And honestly, when I hear those and see those, there's always a little bit of smoke or there's always a little bit of fire when there's smoke going around. But at the same time, this Magic front office does not leak anything. This Magic front office does not say anything to anybody. And so when I hear these rumors, the first thing obviously is it sounds very much like Jabari Smith is going to Orlando. It very much sounds like it's not coming from the Magic. I feel fairly confident that all these reports, all these rumors are not coming directly from the Orlando Magic, that the reporting is coming from other sources. It certainly could be educated dot connecting. That is definitely a thing that is happening around here, where everyone looks at the Magic roster, say they need a shooting guard, they need more shooting. Fred VanVleet's available, Gary Trent Jr. is available, player X is available. That could be who they target with their free agency money. Again, we don't really know what the Magic's free agency plans are now. But what I think's going on here is instead, what's happening is teams are using the Magic as the boogeyman. They are the team that you should be afraid of if you're chasing after Fred VanVleet, if you want to re-sign Fred VanVleet. They are the team that has a ton of cap room. They have a lot of money to spend, but no one knows how they're going to spend it, who they're going to spend it on. And so if you're looking for leverage in a trade negotiation, you could say the Magic are a team that's ready to start competing, ready to win a little bit more, ready to be a little bit more serious on that end. They're the team you should watch out for. So, Phoenix has been long rumored to be chasing after Fred VanVleet too. They're kind of shopping around Chris Paul a little bit. They're trying to get a little bit younger, although, Fred VanVleet doesn't really help you get so much younger. But Phoenix does not have the money to sign Fred VanVleet to the contract that he's likely looking for in the offseason. So what do you do if you're trying to get a deal done? If you're the agent and you're trying to get Fred VanVleet to Phoenix, if you're Toronto trying to get a deal done, you'll probably saying to them, hey, we will trade you Fred VanVleet. If you don't get the deal done, you raise the stakes a little bit and say, if you don't get this deal done, Orlando's going to swoop him and get him. If you want to beat Orlando in the offseason, you've got to get him now. I would imagine that there are a lot, Fred VanVleet's the one that's getting the most noise, but I would imagine there are more than a few of the big free agents who might be using this same tactic if they're available. And so the Magic are the boogeyman because this summer is going to be a summer of activity. As boring as this trade deadline might be, I suspect this summer is going to be a summer of activity for the Orlando Magic. This summer is going to be a summer where the Magic do things, where the Magic make bigger moves, where they do try to take this roster from where they are now to a playoff team. Not a play-in team, not a postseason team, a playoff team. And certainly part of that is the expected growth that'll come from Paolo Banchero in his second year and Franz Wagner heading into his third year, and honestly even Jalen Suggs with a healthy summer into his third year as well. This is again to say that the Magic have the resources to make things happen, whether it's in a trade, accepting more money than they send out because of the cap room that they have, or in free agency. I don't have a free agency list in front of me. I haven't really dug into free agency. It's not a particularly strong free agent class, but there are players that the Magic could target. And of course, they also have an extra first-round pick in their back pocket should they want to make a trade as well. This could be a very active summer for the Orlando Magic. It could be a very exciting summer for the Orlando Magic. It could be a summer where they do start to be aggressive. And I think everybody knows it. And that's why I think we're seeing the Fred VanVleet thing come up so often. It's not necessarily saying the Magic are going to get Fred VanVleet. It's more to say everyone around the league is expecting the Magic to be aggressive and to go after some bigger name players here in the very near future. Again, that could be now. That could be tomorrow. That could be Thursday where the Magic do go out and get a Fred VanVleet, where the Magic do go out and get a big name player and really push this team forward. Or it could be in the offseason where the Magic do have trade capital, have the ability to make trades and make some major moves. We look at this roster, we look at this team, we see a promising young team. They're 17-12 in their last, or 17-13 now in their last 30 games. That's a really good record. That's a pretty solid record, nearly half a season. It feels significant. It feels real. It's not like we're qualifying anything. It's actual results that we can point to and say, this team is doing some good things. It definitely feels like the Magic have taken a step up. We've talked so much about leveling up. This team has leveled up, and honestly, if there's frustration coming from the fan base, if there's frustration in how we look and view this team, it's that we're waiting for them to take that next step up. We're waiting for them to take the next level up, which is winning consistently, playing playoff level basketball, winning games like Tuesday night's game against the Knicks, which is, again, I think a big next step for this Magic team. It's something that's going to take a while. I think there's always a lot of impatience with these processes, but the Magic are taking some major steps forward. But we also see, and so we want to give this roster the chance to figure that part out, and they figured out a lot. But we also see the flaws. We also see the problems with this team and what needs to get fixed. And there's going to be some hard decisions. Some fan favorite players are not going to be part of this thing when it finally comes together. Obviously Terrence Ross is probably on his way out one way or another in the next by the weekend probably. If not in the next 22 hours. I can't add 21 hours, something like that. Change is inevitable. It has to happen. This roster is not enough to get where this team ultimately wants to go. Playoff games expose all your weaknesses. We played a game with playoff-like intensity Tuesday night against the Knicks. That was a really fun game on a number of levels. It was a really instructive game on a number of levels too, because you look at the Magic's last two losses, they lost because they simply didn't have enough shooting. They couldn't put the ball in the basket. And it's guys that you rely on to shoot. Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero have to continue to get better as shooters. But the Magic need more knockdown shooting. They need more space for those guys to operate. They just need more shooting and more consistent shooting in order to take that next step. And that's obviously kind of the big thing. And in every deal that I've constructed or focused on, and every deal that's been pitched to me, shooting is usually the big get that the Magic are aiming for. So we know this team is not perfect. We know that it's going to need some changes. We know that Jeff Weltman's not one to make drastic changes. So I think we'll see kind of moves on the margins again. I think that we'll see this team kind of begin to shape and form this team a little bit differently, but not make any dramatic or drastic changes. And if an opportunity comes along to make a big move, and if the team feels that it's ready, they will go ahead and make that move. Again, the Magic to me are the boogeyman for the rest of the league. They know that this is a young, promising team, 2 potentially top 10 picks in this upcoming draft. So they're going to add, so that at the bare minimum, they're going to add 2 more really talented young players to their group. I think teams understand how hard they play and the job that Jamal Mosley's done to get this team to play hard. It's now about, can this young team put all those pieces together? And that's what everyone's afraid of, is that they'll put those pieces together, add a really nice veteran piece in the offseason with the cap room that they have, whether it's in free agency or trade. And, honestly, I take all these rumors to be a sign that everyone knows this team is indeed coming. Let's take a quick break so we can chat a little bit about our friends from LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve those goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Before we jump back into the Twitter space, want to remind everybody to check out the Locked On NBA Trade Deadline Show. That'll be Thursday, February 9th. Tune in to Locked On NBA on YouTube at 2 Eastern Time to hear reaction from the trades that will change the rest of the NBA season. Who becomes contenders, who is tanking for a better future, and who sets up their offseason really well. That might be the Magic. I'll be hanging out there as well until I head off to the Amway Center for the Magic game, so subscribe to Locked On NBA on YouTube, and don't miss a single deal with the latest analysis about it going down. let's head back to the Twitter space right now and finish our conversation. That's the kind of spiel that I had for this to open the show and to start this thing off. Just kind of the point that I wanted to hammer home and make as we get ready for the trade deadline. Obviously, I'm recording this here at 5 o'clock-ish, a little bit after 5 here, before the day before the trade deadline. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your questions, so let's get to it. We're going to hear from Isaac at Isaac122. Isaac is connecting, and here we go. Isaac, how you doing, my man?
Oh, hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. What's up?
Yeah, I just hopped in, but I heard you talking about like free agent veteran that we need. And I completely agree with that, but like what position do you think that a veteran would fit in our team?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously two spots where the Magic need to get some work. The first is they need a wing shooter. I think that honestly out of the Toronto crew, I think chasing Gary Trent Jr. feels a lot more realistic than chasing Fred VanVleet. This Magic team has two high-level creators and lead guys in Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. It's not that having a third would be the worst thing in the world, but I think they just want a knockdown shooter and a guy that can has a little bit of athleticism, can play a little bit of defense. Gary Trent Jr. would be an expensive option, but I think he would be more affordable certainly than Fred VanVleet, and I think fill a really nice role for this team. If there's a free agent target that I think the Magic have, it's him. The other position of need is backup center. Honestly, I think if the Magic are going to make a trade deadline move, like I like the idea of chasing after Luke Kennard. I like the idea of chasing after even Gary Trent at this point, or chasing after Joe Harris or any number of those shooters. But if the Magic are going to make a deal at the deadline that's going to help this team this year, and obviously they shouldn't just make a move to help them this year, they need a move that'll help them beyond this year. I think they should chase after a backup center. I don't know who the backup center options are. It's a really crowded backup center marketplace. Actually, I think that's going to be the hindrance to getting a Mo Bamba deal done. Is the Magic actually still kind of need Mo Bamba? I know he's not playing right now, but Wendell Carter's still dealing with the plantar fascia issue. He's really struggling. You can see him kind of struggling with those issues. Mo Wagner is solid positionally. I think he's done a really good job this year. He's also the worst rim protector, the worst rim protector or defensive field goal percentage at the rim in the entire league. Teams are not afraid to drive on him, and while he does get a few charges, he is not exactly stopping anybody. And so, to me, immediate positional need, backup center is the most immediate need. The Magic have two kind of third string centers who are both fine. They do their jobs. They're due to have a big game every once in a while, but they need someone that's gonna really kind of solidify that backup center spot. And honestly, like I think I mentioned this throughout the offseason last year, especially ahead of free agency. Wendell Carter is really, really good. I really, really like what he does. He is due to miss 15 to 20 games every year. So I still like. One of the reasons I really like the Isaiah Hartenstein idea in the offseason, I actually still kind of like him as an idea for this trade deadline, even at the new contract that he signed. You need a center who's capable of starting a few games here and there too, and potentially starting for long stretches of time for the long term. Again, those are not easy to find, and it's a very crowded center market. There's a lot of teams that need backup center help. Like Mo Bamba in the trade pecking order is probably behind Jakob Poeltl. Now that Miles Turner's off the board, he's off the board, but there's a lot of teams that need backup centers, and the Magic, I honestly think, are one of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you're talking about shooters, I also agree with that. But in this draft, if we so happen to fall like somewhere in the 8 to 10 range, we would be able to grab Grady Dick. I don't know how people feel about that, but he's one of those guys that can shoot lights out, and he has size to him too. So I know Weltman likes that. I don't know. I mean, that's something that we have to wait, obviously, and see when the lottery of the draft happens. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for us for sure.
Yeah, and again, like a lot of potential to do a lot of different things. I mean, I'm still doing some draft prep. I've liked what I've seen from Keontae George so far. I know there's some questions about his play in big games so far. He had a nice game against Kansas a few weeks ago. He's kind of on the upper end of guys I would be looking at as well. I haven't watched any Grady Dick, but I've heard a lot of fans talking about him. There's another shooter in that group. I am blanking on his name because I'm not into super draft prep mode yet. That's on me. But yeah, I mean, I think the draft is going to play a big role in what kind of offseason the Magic have too. Like, if the Magic do luck into a lottery spot, into a top 4 spot, if it's 1 or 2, they're keeping it, and they're going to take Wembanyama, they're going to take Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson, as Sam Vecini of Athletics says, and I think a lot of NBA people who watch this Magic team say, Scoot Henderson is exactly the kind of player the Magic need right now. In a lot of ways, I think that the Magic will not be upset if they win the lottery. But even if, let's say they get 3 or 4, honestly, I think the Magic are a team that could decide, hey, we will package our 2 picks to get a star player from a team that's ready to hit reset. And I think teams assess themselves a little bit more in the offseason to say, do we want to reset? Do we want to kind of start over? Have we reached our peak? They do that at the trade deadline. They'll do that in the offseason too, especially after a playoff failure. If there's a team out there that's kind of gone as far as they can go, again, having 2 first-round picks, it's an easy way to jumpstart a rebuild. That's the kind of deal that the Magic could get into, especially, again, with the cap room they have. They don't have to send out a lot of money. They can just take in a big-time player into their open cap space, and that'll help propel them forward too.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would have to be someone that is already that has 2 or 3 years left on their contract.
Yeah.
Have to pay Franz and Paolo, obviously.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm scared about too, though, is it depends how big of a star they are when we're trading. But I feel like some teams would want us to get or Franz up, and I don't know.
I mean, you're only
if he's untouchable or not.
I think Franz is pretty much untouchable, and his salary makes him even more difficult to move because the kind of player that you're looking to get for Franz Wagner is an established star. And already, we project Franz Wagner to be a multi-time All-Star at this point. You are not trading Franz Wagner unless you are getting a multi-time All-Star on a long-term deal who is just, who's just, you get him, you are a champ. You're not just, you're a playoff team, you're a champempionship team. You're well on your way to a championship team.
There is Luka Doncic.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's most likely not going to happen, but
not yet.
Once this thing comes up, maybe something.
But to that point, and if there's anyone else that wants to jump in, go ahead and raise your hand, make a speaker request here. To that point, this is the exciting thing about where the Magic are at. They have the flexibility to be involved in these conversations. They have 2 really good pieces in place, and then they have the flexibility to do whatever they want to do. If they want to be aggressive, go after the next disgruntled star, they have the assets, they have the players, they have the people to make that happen and still probably be competitive and still have a decent supporting cast around them. If they want to be more conservative, if they want to just fill in with veteran role players, which is, kind of where I land, or make a trade to add, a more solid veteran role presence, they have the ability to do that too. They can take on a bad salary to get, even a young player that they really like. Again, I think one thing that I've kind of pitched as something the Magic could do, although they don't quite have the cap room the Hawks had that year. They could go make a Clint Capella type trade. Say, hey, we'll trade Terrence Ross is expiring. We'll trade something else and eat some supposedly bad money and put that in our cap room next year. And that's our free agency. And that's the free agent. That's our free agency move. The Hawks essentially did that because they weren't going to go out and sign anybody. No one was going to sign with them. And they went out and got Clint Capella, and that was, not as transformational as drafting Trae Young, but it was pretty big for that team and helped that team take a pretty big leap. I don't anticipate the Magic doing something like that at this year's deadline because they have a nice group that they like. They're playing well. They're progressing the way they want them to progress. I don't think the Magic are going to be into too much disrupting what they have already. Honestly, if you ask me, the Magic have 2 goals at this trade deadline. The Magic have 2 things they want to accomplish at this trade deadline. The first is trade Terrence Ross or trade whatever they need to trade to open up playing time for Caleb Houston. I think they want to get Caleb Houston into games more and give him a real opportunity to play with this group. The second is free up a roster spot so they can convert Kevon Harris from a two-way deal to a full contract, and because they really like him. He's played very, very well for them. Those to me are very small goals, and it's essentially trading Terrence Ross for nothing. Essentially, is what buying out Terrence Ross. Maybe there's a Gary Harris deal out there. I don't think so necessarily. I don't think the Magic want to trade Gary Harris because they have two veterans and they're probably getting rid of one of them. But to me, I think the Magic's trade deadline goals this year are on the smaller side, and they're going to be more proactive in the offseason when they'll have the cap room. They'll have some free agency pull to kind of make things happen for them.
Yeah, I can see it going either way. But one team that I can compare us to is like a young Celtics team with JT and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. Those type of guys. We can build a team like that for our future, for sure.
Yeah.
But just adding little pieces like they've done, like Williams and Horford and
exactly
people that like Franz and Powell can just have success with. Just like people they can lean on, players that win games for them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, again, honestly, like that might be Fred VanVleet. I'm skeptical, but Fred VanVleet is a very active defender. He adds the 3-point shooting this team needs. He's a crazy good competitor. Like he is, he had his struggles earlier in the year with Toronto. He is carrying that Toronto Raptors team right now and keeping them at least in shouting distance of the race. That Toronto team has a lot of issues. Fred VanVleet might be one of them, but I will not question that guy's effort. I don't want to call him a kid anymore because he's almost 30. But I will not question his effort and his desire and to some extent his ability in some places to really play hard, carry a team when they need to. I don't think it's the right move for the Magic, but I won't say I am against it. If that makes sense. If they do it. It changes some things. It changes how we assess this team. It changes how we look at this team and what they should be able to accomplish. It opens up some new doors down the road. But I don't think it's necessarily, like I said, I think it's a floor raiser. I don't think it's a ceiling raiser. I actually think it lowers the ceiling a little bit more. But by the same token, maybe that's what the Magic need. Maybe the Magic need a floor raiser right now so they can get into the postseason conversation, get that experience in the postseason, and then figure out what the next move is, whether that's, again, trading Fred VanVleet down the road for that player that puts you over the top, in a sort of DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard way. Maybe it's, before Cole Anthony's big extension, flipping Cole Anthony into something because someone is willing to pay Cole Anthony to move this team to the next level. I mean, the money things that the issue for the Magic, and I think this is the real pressure point for this offseason and this trade deadline, this season is the last season where money is meaningless. Like, I had so many people talk to me about Jonathan Isaac and say, we can't have, before he came back, obviously, we can't have our highest paid player not playing. It's a really bad look. And I'm just like, why does that matter? Like, money isn't important right now. We're not cash strapped. If we need to create cap room, we can create cap room by waiving a couple guys. They have cap room anyway in the offseason. This is really the last offseason where that is true. Maybe a little bit next offseason, depending on what they do with Cole Anthony. But they got to sign Cole Anthony to an extension. Cole Anthony's extension eligible this summer. That's going to be a big decision point for this front office. They'll have Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs extension the following summer. Paolo Banchero the summer after that. The free money's gone. The free money runs out at the end of the summer. We can maybe extend it out to the summer of 2024. But the Magic have to start building and forming their team now. They got to be a playoff team next year. Like that's ultimately what it comes down to. Isaac, I want to thank you for jumping on and asking some questions. Let's hear from our friends at the Blue and White Ignite podcast. Let's let them connect in here. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Phil, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I know, we're getting close to the trade deadline. In my opinion, I really just can't see a scenario where Bamba, and Ross, even RJ are on this team past 3 tomorrow. What are the likely chances that they are traded? Just because I feel like we do this every trade deadline. Like, they're either gone and then they're still here, but they're out of the rotation, so why not get at least something, even if it's a second-round pick at this point?
Yeah. So, I'm like, I will come out and say this on the front end. I am a conservative, like when it comes to like trades and stuff like this, I'm a conservative thinker. I am not an adventurous person. That's why I'm not a general manager. That's why I don't think I could do the job particularly well. I tend to ask questions and overthink things. So I will start there. Whenever I always expect a quiet deadline, and then it isn't a quiet deadline. So I will admit a personal flaw there. I think the biggest issue with just getting a second round pick for Terrence Ross and Mo Bamba is their salary. There just aren't teams that can eat. Terrence Ross is $11.5 million. Mo Bamba is $10 million. There are no teams that can just eat that contract without giving up something in return. And so for the Magic, it's about getting value. Like they should not be doing moves that are favors to other teams. If they can get someone to give, no one's offering a first to get off a bad contract for Mo Bamba. And the Magic, again, they have all this cap room. Unless that bad contract is someone that can help them, why take that bad contract? Why take on 2 extra years? Like I said, this is the last year where they kind of have free money. This is the last year where that cap flexibility really is important. They don't want to kind of back themselves in a corner and kind of end their opportunity to add something in the offseason before they even get there. And so, especially with Mo Bamba, like they either can cut Mo Bamba at the end of the season before his contract guarantee date, and they have that extra money to add to their roster anyway, or they get another crack at it in the offseason. They keep that $10 million around, and now there might be a team that has some cap room that's willing to give something up for him, or take on that salary more than they would now. And so I think with both those players, the salary reality makes it really tough. It's one thing saying, "Hey, give us a top 55 protected for RJ Hampton. We need to find him a new home. We want to give him an opportunity somewhere." There might be a team willing and ready to do that. There might be a team that says, "Yeah, we'll give RJ a shot. Here's a top 40 protected second. Let's go for it." Like that, absolutely do that. Absolutely 100% do that if you could find a team that'll do that. I'm not sure there is a team out there, to be perfectly honest. We'll see if anyone can talk themselves into RJ Hampton. I mean, it's not like after his rookie year where he had no body of work. He was still just all potential, and the Magic took a flyer on him. Now he's got 3 years of work behind him, and it's not really clear what he is. And even on this roster, he can't find his way. I think those do raise some real questions, and he's honestly like he's playing in the G League to have tape to show potential teams for free agency, for the trade deadline, that he could still play. And so maybe there's a team out there that's willing to take a chance on him, and hopefully there is. I would like for him, for his sake, to have that opportunity. He deserves an opportunity. He has done so many things that this Magic team has asked him to do, and the Magic just don't have room for him anymore, and it sucks. It's awful for him. It's just a circumstance of the league. But with Bamba and Ross, the salaries just make it really hard to just do a straight salary dump. There aren't teams with an extra $10 million around that can give something of value to the Magic to make that salary match. And again, I think the Magic prefer the flexibility. Now with Ross, I am expecting that if the Magic don't trade Ross tomorrow, they will buy him out. And I think a lot of teams around the league are expecting that too, and that's driving his market down. There's just not a lot of teams that, whatever team is trying to acquire Terrence Ross is going to say, well, I could just get him for free on Sunday or Saturday whenever he clears waivers. Why give up something of value now? And so again, I think that's making it really difficult to make a deal. And, as I talked with Keith Smith of Spot Track about this last week, and I agree with the Magic's approach on this. The Magic aren't going to send Terrence Ross somewhere he doesn't want to be. They're going to take care of him. They're going to make sure that he is happy where he's at. They're going to work with him and his representatives to send him someplace that he wants to be and wants to play. He likes in Orlando. I think he has no ill will for the Magic or for Orlando. I think he loves it here. He wants to play for a playoff team. So they're not going to trade him to San Antonio. They're not going to trade him to Detroit. They're not going to trade him to some team that isn't in the playoff chase. Worst case scenario, they're going to let Terrence go where he wants to go, and they'll send him out to free agency to do that if they have to. Going to take another quick break here to tell you a little bit more about FanDuel. You probably know all about FanDuel, but you're going to find out a little bit more right here. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We at Locked On are really excited about our new sports betting partner because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, and that's, of course, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Plus, plenty more. You got Rookie of the Year odds on there. I'm sure the Rising Stars game MVP is on there, and I would probably bet on Paolo too, the #1 pick in the Rising Stars game. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're going to close this part of the show. We'll continue on with our Twitter Space discussion here. But I remind you all, after you're done listening to us, go check out the Locked On Game to Game podcast, the Locked On NBA Game to Game process, or Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Now, let's dive back into our Twitter Spaces. Cool. So if there's anyone else who has a speaker request or wants to jump in and talk a little bit about the Magic at the trade deadline, feel free to do so. Sorry if I moved you a little soon there. So if anyone has any other questions about the Magic, the season, the trade deadline, anything else, please go ahead and jump on the show here. I will hang out here for at least another 15 minutes. Unless there are no other questions. I got a few questions coming up here, so let's get to them. Let's hear from Stephen Elmore first. I'll get to you in a second, David. Stephen, while you're connecting, how you doing, my man? How's it going, Stephen? Going once, Stephen. Going twice. Stephen, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's up?
Hey, there we go. Good to be with you, Phil. Do you put any stock at all in the rumors of the Magic looking at Trey looking for a request out of Atlanta? I don't put much stock in that. And then besides that question, the only thing I really could see the Magic doing is really small moves, like you said, getting rid of the people that are leaving already. And you're right, most people are waiting for Ross to be a buyout, but there are a couple teams that would need to get rid of some salary probably to pick them up. The Lakers are the first that come to mind for that. So,
yeah, and again, whenever you come to a trade, the Magic aren't going to do a trade just to do a trade. They need value out of it. So, what do the Lakers have that the Magic might want? Is always the next question. And frankly, you look at that roster. I know a lot of people pitch Pat Beverly. If they do Pat Beverly, they'll probably just buy out Pat Beverly. I don't see Pat Beverly ever coming to Orlando. So again, unless the deal is Terrence Ross wants to be in Los Angeles, wants to play for the Lakers, and the Magic are doing him and the Lakers a favor, they'll do Pat Beverly in a second and be done. And that's that. The Magic have shown that they're willing to do that. They did that with Bol essentially. They helped the Celtics get under the luxury tax. They took a chance on Bol. They gave up really nothing because the second round pick isn't even going to convey. The Magic are perfectly willing to play ball and help teams out like that if it accomplishes one of their goals or is something they want to pursue. So, yeah, you're right. There might be a team like that. And again, does Terrence Ross want to play for the Lakers? That's a fair question. Does that accomplish what he wants to accomplish? That's a fair question, and only really Terrence can answer that. To your point about Trae Young, the Magic should be in the market for any potential star that can help them win. I don't think you should. I mean, even with, Fred VanVleet is the one that's on the tip of everyone's tongues. You don't ignore the opportunity. You don't just bypass the opportunity. You don't say no to the opportunity. You think about it. You look into it. You make a decision. To me, maybe beggars can't be choosers. Trae Young would help this team, obviously. He is a great shooter. My concern with Trae Young is increasingly he wants to be the show. He wants everything to revolve around him. In Atlanta, everything has revolved around him. They brought in DeJounte Murray. I thought that was a great move for Atlanta. I thought that it would help Trae kind of decrease some of his worst habits, decrease his turnovers, make him a much more efficient shooter by getting him off the ball a little bit more. I thought that they'd be able to kind of share the load a little bit better, but Trae Young is clashing with a coach again, and that'll make two coaches that have seemingly had trouble dealing with Trae Young and dealing with him. He is an obviously dynamic player. To win a championship, to be one of the best teams in the league, you've got to deal with a little bit of friction. Friction is natural when you're one of the best teams in the league. It is a constant state. And so, the Magic have been blessed in this early rebuild to have guys who really like to play and hang out with each other, who really like each other, that are really for each other. But that's also, that also can be a problem. That also could be limiting. That they need, they might, not that friction is always good or always bad, but, there's going to be some stress coming. Again, we're previewing this already. Cole Anthony, believes he's a starter, and he should believe he's a starter. But on this team, he comes off the bench, and he has been perfectly accepting of that role. He's been very happy about it. But now he becomes extension eligible. What happens when the Magic bring him an offer that he doesn't like? Maybe he wants $20 million a year, and the Magic come in at 18, or they come in with a front-loaded deal that doesn't really fit what he's thinking. What happens then? I know for a fact that there is a little bit of concern internally with the Magic. What happens when the realities of the basketball business do come into that locker room, when they do have to start making trades to improve the roster? This group cannot continue forever. I know that's something Magic fans have been saying over several iterations of this team. This group cannot continue forever. They will have to make moves, and that's going to change the dynamic a little bit. So you can't be afraid of it, but at the same time, Trae changes your team completely. And unless he is willing to buy into what the Magic are doing and give Paolo his turn and Franz's turn, that may not be the right move. Now, maybe it's worth making the same point I made about Donovan Mitchell over the offseason. This group with Donovan Mitchell, the Cleveland version of Donovan Mitchell, is a really good team. Like, I'm not here to say that the Magic should regret not trading for Donovan Mitchell. This group is ready for a Donovan Mitchell type player. They are ready to make that. I think they are closer to, if they're not ready to make that trade, they're a year off from making that trade, where they get that star player that completes the whole picture and really elevates this team beyond where they're at. They need to be Cleveland next year. They need to be last year's version of Cleveland next year. If they're not it this year, I don't think they're it this year. They need to get to that level. In the offseason, I didn't think the Magic were ready because you bring in a Donovan Mitchell. All of a sudden, your expectations are about winning and winning only. You don't get the chance to develop. You don't get the chance to grow. You're taking the ball out of Paolo's hands, out of Franz's hands. Their development's very different. They're not complete players. I didn't think they were ready for it then. I think they're more ready for it now. So, again, the same question with Trae Young. You bring in a Trae Young. Trae's going to be Trae. He's already established. He knows who he is. How does that affect how Paolo develops? How does that affect how Franz develops? Are they complete enough players where they can shift and mold their game to the way that Trae plays as much as Trae shifts and molds his game to the way that they play? I'm not sure this team is there yet. So I think I hold off on that for now because Trae is such a fundamentally changing player.
I agree.
To some extent, Fred VanVleet isn't that. So I get the Fred VanVleet. We're going to keep going back to that because there is a little bit of smoke there. Fred VanVleet isn't that kind of player. Fred VanVleet can fit in with the group. He finds his spots. If the Magic are going to make a play and offer a max contract to somebody, I don't think they should offer a max contract to Fred VanVleet. I don't think they should offer $30 million. That price point is just a little bit too much for me. But I get why Fred VanVleet is the guy that they might be chasing.
Well, for me, I'm happy with the three-guard rotation that we currently have. I'm happy with Cole and Suggs developing and Markelle doing his thing. I'm perfectly happy to roll forward with that. I certainly hope that they've had a lot of preliminary discussions with Cole about his role and about developing. And, hey, Markel's getting older. You never know what the future holds.
He's 25.
Yeah, I know. But,
It feels like his game's old.
It does. they can front load his deal while we kind of have the space. But if he's not willing to do that, I would package him and Bamba together. They're good buddies. They're both from New York, and I would move them together, and I would move them this offseason because you need time to put that kind of deal together. But I don't really think that that's realistic. If the Magic make a multi-person move this trade deadline, I think it's because we got in on somebody's bigger trade and we're the third person there, and we're kind of making salaries match for people that don't have a future here. And if that's a good opportunity for them as well, I could see them pulling the trigger on something like that. And the only player personally that I'm willing to go all in and trade lots of picks and lots of players and everybody basically except for Franz and Paolo is somebody who's proven and loyal and has a longer contract like Dame, who is older, but he could immediately step in. He would, and I love Markelle. Markelle is my guy. He would immediately be better than Markelle and would immediately elevate our team. Something like that, I think you could pull the trigger on. But short of that, what are you trading for?
Exactly.
No reason.
Exactly. I'm with you on that front. If Dame Lillard suddenly became available, he won't be. I don't think he's eligible to be traded because he just signed an extension. But if Dame Lillard became available, like that is a player that elevates your team immediately. Like I said earlier, the reason why I'm a little hesitant to do the Fred VanVleet stuff is I think Fred VanVleet raises your floor, but he doesn't raise your ceiling. Damian Lillard raises your floor and your ceiling. No offense to the teams that Portland had. They had some very good teams. Paolo and Franz would probably be the two best or potentially the two best players that a guy like Dame Lillard's ever played with. And that's no offense to LaMarcus Aldridge, no offense to CJ McCollum. Did Dame get to play with Brandon Roy? I'm not sure, but it certainly wasn't healthy Brandon Roy. It's no offense to anyone that's played with Portland and some of the great teams that Portland's had. Dame Lillard's always needed another guy and like a player of that caliber, of that stature, in this and that kind of personality and attitude in Orlando would be a huge a deal worth doing.
Absolutely, and with Dame, I mean, he started slow. He needed some time to develop, and I feel like young guards don't really get that. I look at somebody like Suggs, I look at somebody like Cole, but especially Suggs, and I say, okay, if he had time, if he had 3 years to put it together and really worked on his craft and could stay healthy, could he turn into that? I feel like maybe his expectation for us should be more like Marcus Smart, but you never know. We don't know the drive that's in the kids and what they're willing to put in on the work and how far their body's willing to take them before they have an injury problem.
Yeah, and I mean, Jalen Suggs is a great example of this. I mean, it's telling that there are rumors that teams are still lining up to get Jalen Suggs. The teams still believe enough in Jalen Suggs. And obviously, his defense being at a very high level already, that's getting him on the court. That's keeping him on the court as he goes through his struggles. The Magic deserved to give him a healthy offseason to get better. He didn't have an offseason this year. He was out with the ankle injury. He was struggling with that. Let's give him a full offseason before I think we really entertain figuring out what exactly he is. And obviously, I think by the end of your rookie contract, you got to know who a player is. And so we're getting to that point, and there's going to be a lot of questions there. But, Suggs is a guy, again, that I think is worth sticking with and hanging on to. And that takes a guy off the board that other teams might be interested in. Steven, I want to get to some of the other people on that are waiting to speak and to say hi. So I want to thank you for jumping on. David, let's get to you while you're connecting. I will say hi. David, how you doing, my man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's up?
All right. Hey, guys. Hey, I want to keep this kind of short and sweet. I know we've been chatting for a while, Phil, so it's just... I'm the
one that struggles to keep it short and sweet, so.
Oh, yeah. It's just nice to see, we've been through the struggles lately. God, the last 10 years, let's just say, has not been great for the most part. So it's nice to see a nice young core where all that it can go up is up, and just tuning into games and not expecting a blowout, right? We're winning the games we should be winning now. For the most part, we have a dud every now and then because of our lack of shooting, which you've talked about. It's obviously our biggest issue. But, just we're winning the games we should be winning. We're surprising teams. I think when our defense is on point, which, it is lately, that is huge for us. And we could compete with anybody. But I think the backup center thing you're talking about, I know Isaac's just kind of ramping up. I think if he can get to 20, 25 minutes a game, that solves a lot of this team's problems. So, even playing, especially in small ball rotations, he can play some center. And I'm very excited for him to start getting back healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for a while. Jonathan Isaac it feels like he's a bonus for what this team wants to do or what this team can do. He's still very much, I think the team is still figuring out what they can do with him. I have always been a little bit skeptical of playing him at center full time. So I would still, I'd still be looking for a kind of full-time backup center. But Isaac has been a lot more physical than I expected him to be. He's been much more willing to mix things up. I think one of the benefits of him being out for a long time is he has a lot of, you could tell he has a lot of confidence in his knee. Like he's not worried about banging knees or falling to the floor or anything like that. Like he's kind of skipped that step of his on-court or he did that step of his on-court recovery behind closed doors and not in games. But you could tell he's still getting his legs under him. And so I think the Magic, playing him at center, playing him more on the interior is designed to kind of keep his stamina up. You can still tell like he's a step slower than he was, or a half step slower at least, than he was when he was fully healthy. But he's still building strength and still building kind of game fatigue and game wind. So, honestly, Isaac has been really, really impressive. I've really loved the way that he's played, and I'm really excited to see how he develops next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you, Phil. I think this trade deadline likely is, like the last speaker said, I forget the guy's name, my bad. But I think we're going to probably be a part of another 3 or 4 team trade, likely taking off some salary, something like that. Hopefully, we can get a little something for Ross. But like you said, they're going to do right by him. They're going to let him go where he wants to go. He's done a lot for the team. They're not just going to dump him off to like a bad team, obviously. But hey, maybe we'll be surprised and they'll make a Van Fleet type move and we'll make a big push this year. So, there's always that, but more likely in the offseason, I would say for sure.
Yeah. I know I've made this point several times. I saw a couple people who jumped in as to make speaker requests, jumped out. If you want to jump back in, we'll get to you here in a sec. And if you didn't make one of those and you want to have a question, go ahead and ask it. Go ahead and raise your hand and ask it. Yeah, I mean, I've said this numerous times throughout the course of the year, especially with fans who are kind of wringing their hands a little bit over Jamal Mosley's coaching decisions and rotation decisions and the way that the Magic are kind of using some guys and trying some things out. This season's not about this season. Like, I don't want to see a trade that is there to try and quote unquote save this season. Like, making the play-in tournament this year would be great. I'm for it. I've always been ringing the bell of this team needs to be trying to win. I think I was one of the earlier people that was doing a lot of standings watching and saying like, hey, this team's not so far out. They can still get in this. They're still in the race. I am, my latest obsession from everything that I write and think about while I'm watching games is like, okay, what's this going to be like in the playoffs? Like how does this team kind of make that postseason push? What's that look like? But the goal for this season is not to make the postseason. Like anything the Magic do at the deadline, anything the Magic do in the next 21 hours now or heading into the offseason has to be focused on the future. It has to be focused on the bigger picture, on what this team looks like 2-3 years down the road, and because that's when this team's going to be contending. If we're following the kind of like usual stepping stones of the league, you make the playoffs the first year as a low seed, as a 7, 8, 9, again 10 I guess at this point seed. You make that play-in tournament. The next year you take a step up. You're fighting for home court advantage. You're in the playoffs. You win the play-in tournament maybe, and then you're competing for a championship. I think the way the Magic did in '95 was very unrealistic, and that's because Shaq is a generational player. But the way the Magic got into the playoffs in 2009 and got to 2009, everyone forgets they snuck into the playoffs as an 8 seed in 2007, got swept by the Pistons, came back the next year, made a big free agent move to get Rashard Lewis. That helped transform the team. No one expected them to be back in the playoffs that year. A lot of people actually expected the Magic in 2008 to be one of the worst teams in the league. Everyone hated that Rashard Lewis move. But they took that next step up. They won the division, had home court, won a playoff series, got humbled again by the Pistons in the second round. Then they got to 2009, And like, honestly, entering the 09 playoffs, my thought was like, hey, competitive second round series. Get to the conference finals, great, but competitive second round series. Really show that you're just missing maybe that last little piece to get over the hump. They surprised everyone and get to the finals in 09. The kind of timeline that teams typically go through, unless they make some dramatic, crazy moves like the Celtics did in 08 or the Lakers did in 2020, the typical lifespan is you sneak into the playoffs, you make a move to get better, you get to that next level, you make another move to get better, you get to that next level, and you're competing for a championship. I mean, the lines are not very, very big. So even a competitive second round series, you're right there. You're really close to getting to the conference finals and really close to getting to the finals. So we're at that first step, and it's